One of the biggest lessons which we have learned is that the resilience, especially geopolitical resilience, should be inbuilt in your supply chain. Now, everybody are keeping a buffer, at least 15 to 30% of safety stock. What could be the multi-routing or plan B corridors, for sending your goods? Can you also combine ocean with surface or rail? Can you terminate the cargo at one port and then
Okay.
move the cargo from there? Can you have the visibility of your cargo, which can be monitored at any given point of time? Logistics was anyways complicated. Now it has become overly complicated.
Hello and welcome to Macro Decode. The US-Iran war and the closure of Strait of Hormuz exposed how vulnerable global trade remains to geopolitical tensions. For Indian exporters and the logistics industry, the impact went far beyond higher freight rates. Rising insurance premiums, longer transit times, rerouting of shipments, and the need to hold additional inventory all added to the cost of doing business. But the bigger questions remain. How much did the disruption actually cost Indian exporters in the supply chain industry? And has the industry become more resilient to such risks? Joining us today to discuss this is Jitendra Srivastava, CEO, Triton Logistics and Maritime. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much.
So, the US-Iran war and the closure of Strait of Hormuz did affect the supply chain.
Yes.
How much additional cost was incurred over higher freight rates, insurance premiums, longer transit times, and inventory costs since the closure? And of this, how much did Indian exporters and Indian supply chain industry bear?
The whole industry is going through major disruption, but this time the quantum and the uncertainty is something which is the real showstopper for the logistics professionals. The longer the war remains, the longer the disruption remains, the costs are increasing. If you look at the requirement of the working capital for most of these Indian exporters, they have surged anywhere between 15 to 25%. Insurance premium has been around 0.15 to 0.25% at one point of time. Today, it is almost ranging between 7.5 to 12.5%. It's almost 40 to 50 times of what it used to be at any given point of time.
Right.
Basic like freight rates have changed. A lot of surcharges has been come in. The quantum of jump has been somewhere between 2,000 to 4,000 per container. There is an extended transit time. So this means your inventory is getting stuck. You need more working capital, not only to manufacture, but to also keep a larger or a longer inventory in your area. So all these things have put together has made nothing less than 15 to 25% of the total working capital, which is required.
So the Indian exporters and Indian supply chain was bearing all the cost, or part of it was borne by the importers?
Major part of the initial disruption, the exporter has to bear most of the cost. Now with realization or understanding, most of the new contracts either have been delayed or are being renegotiated so that this excess cost can be split between the sellers and the buyers. But yes, Indian exporters had taken a lot of brunt when it comes to this disruption.
Okay. Have things come back to normalcy?
I don't think, Sangeeta, anything has returned to normalcy at the moment. If you look at from the entire supply chain side, it remains still in a state of severe and active disruption. With one day it's open, one day it's closed, another day it's open, another day it's closed. This is not returning back to the normals. We still have got the Hormuz chokehold, which is still restricting commercial vessels to go across. There are attacks which are being done. So there is a state of fear. Also, even the Red Sea and the Suez, people are avoiding because of all those Houthi attacks. And it is taking a longer time now to go across the Cape of Good Hope. The Red Sea has been more than 1,000 days now, continuous disruption which is happening. I don't think anything is going or to return to normalcy this year or maybe by early next year.
In terms of insurance premiums, freight costs, are they the same levels, or you have seen them coming down?
No. It's fluctuating. It can fluctuate a little bit up and down, but nothing is coming down. The freight rate still skyrocket. The insurance premium remains the same. It will continue to hover around, as I said, instead of a multiplier of 40 or 50, it might come down to 30, 35, but it's very, very important today to secure your cargo, to secure your voyage.
What are the biggest lessons that we have learned from this war, and how resilient have we become since the war?
One of the biggest lesson which we all have learned is that the resilience model, especially the geopolitical resilience, should be inbuilt now in your supply chain.
That's
And
right.
it has to replace your cost minimization as the primary metrics of any network design. It used to be at one point of time that how much cost can you save when you are designing the whole thing. Today, it's not about cost. It's about how much this model can undertake when these kind of disruptions happen without breaking the entire supply chain, that the goods are moved or reach where they are supposed to reach. And one of the very important thing which we all have learned is how the whole inventory management has to be done. There was a time when industry, like automotive industry, used to be on a zero or just-in-time inventory model. They used to keep zero buffer stock.
Right.
Now it's complete death of that model. Now everybody or every organized, every industry is keeping a buffer at least 15 to 30% of safety stock to take care of these kind of sudden shutdowns or disruptions. Another thing which most of the supply chain users or providers have done is multi-routing or plan B corridors, for sending your goods. What are the other alternatives, where you can send it out? And your supply chain has to have a very dynamic routing capability inbuilt into that. Can you also combine ocean with surface or like a rail? If you can do that, then so these things are also coming into account. The other area, which is two ocean rule, or can you split the cargo? If my cargo from west coast is not moving, can I move the same cargo from the east coast?
Okay.
So do we have that kind of a resilience inbuilt into our supply chain? Can you terminate the cargo at one of the other port, which is a nearby port, and then
Okay.
move the cargo from there? That is also being considered. We are trying to look at the other destinations, a nearby port or a nearby area where it can be taken to in case of crisis. Um, Important area is also the technology or AI or the real-time tracking capability. Can you have the visibility of your cargo? So do you want a faster vessel or you want a vessel which can be monitored at any given point of time? These are the areas which are very, very critical today. This was anyways complicated. Now it has become overly complicated. You just cannot go from point A to point B. There could be n number of different routes to reach from point A to point B today.
Yeah. So there are a lot of changes that have come in supply chain industry, as you mentioned,
Yeah,
having a larger buffer, rerouting, terminating your shipments. But that itself would probably put a lot of cost burden on the company. So how much would integrating all those things will put an additional burden on the company?
anything which is not moving in the way it was supposed to move.
Yeah.
This means that there are going to be an additional cost factor inbuilt into this. The cost can go from 15-20% up to 30-35%, depending on how complex or how diverse that supply chain has been from the originally planned direct supply chain.
Recently, the trade data which has been coming in, we have been seeing a growth in exports. The commodity prices which has gone up, that is also being included in this. But what about supply chain cost? The additional cost that is being incurred by the supply chain, is it also getting added into these export figures?
Most of the contracts or the negotiations which are being done today, they are all factoring in these charges. When we are getting a freight rate from, let's say, a shipping line, it includes all the surcharges and the extra charges, and they are all inbuilt into the freight now. So this means that all the cost or the cost implications which have been coming in, now they are being bundled and given as one charge. Now, this all put together increases your cost manyfold. All these costs become a part of the renegotiation or the new negotiation which are happening between a buyer and the seller.
So that means the export numbers that we are hearing, that also includes the additional cost.
Yes. That includes the additional cost. Correct.
Right. Some of the sectors were very vulnerable to these kind of disruptions. Which are these sectors and how prepared are they today for a prolonged disruption?
Any sector which is a low margin but high volume are definitely going to get hit because the entire freight or the supply chain is based on the volume which you carry. It's not about the value of the cargo. The industries which has got impacted is like a perishable industry. All these exporters are mainly at the mercy of these global carriers which are moving today. And they have started building up all these costs. And this has really squeezed down their already thin margin textile, garments, metals. they are also vulnerable because of the delay in transit and the high level of inventory which is required. And so at times they are also being air freighted instead of going via the sea. Anything which you start air freighting, the cost jumps dynamically. So just to meet the deadline, they are doing it. So some of the engineering goods and chemicals are mostly low value.
Yeah.
They really had to, absorb a lot of cost in the initial phases. There is also a difference between the large entities or the large conglomerates as compared to the SMEs and the
Yeah.
MSMEs. So we also saw that some of the agri companies slowed down on the orders. They were waiting. Nobody thought that the war will go on or this disruption will go on for so long.
Right.
They tried to not ship it out at one point of time, just hoping that things will iron out and come back to normalcy. But now again, they are moving it because the inventory is piling up. So they have to move it out.
Have they made the kind of changes that was needed to become lucid?
A vast majority of these MSMEs or the small time exporters, they are not very large conglomerates. They do not have that kind of a financial or a technological capacity to build that kind of resilience or to bring in contingency plan. This crisis has hit them hard. I do not see that they are really working on build the resilience into the system. They are still trying to negotiate and see that how this cost can be split between the buyers and the sellers and wherever they can do it. There is a working capital crunch even for them now because of the hold up which is happening. They work on a very limited working capital, and that makes it very difficult for them because at any given point of time they do not have that kind of a financial backing or a strength. Then there is a cost of holding the inventory. Even if they don't want to ship it today, you have to have a warehouse, keep it. The credit accessibility is also limited. They do not get the easy financing. There is a high interest rate. Then there are other technological barriers as well. They cannot invest in technology.
So the disruption has actually hit the small and medium exporters much
more.
harder.
Yes.
But are they still there, or probably some of them have left the trade?
They are holding up. I mean, I'm talking about mid or small exporters, but they are in a bad shape. They are hoping that everything comes back to normalcy very fast. A few of them might have gone out of the business as well. Looking at how much you can hold on to.
Yeah.
The crisis has really been for a while now. The problem is not that how long it has been. The problem is that we don't see the light, at the end now.
Okay. Which countries have managed this disruption better? And what did their governments and the industries do so that the trade could probably hold up?
One is, of course, China. They managed to do it. I mean, there was a lot of diplomatic leverage which they took. They provided a lot of security guarantees to the regional conflicts. They had this access through this polar Silk Road from Europe via Arctic routes. So some of the carriers which are directly owned by the Chinese, they also helped to make sure that the supply chain of China is less disrupted. They also moved a lot of cargo from sea freight to this China Europe railway express. So they can move it via rail to make sure that cost is lower than air freight. And Saudi is another country which where they did it pretty well. Not only that, they bypassed the blockage of this Hormuz. They had their the land which they used. I mean, a lot of movements happened through the land.
Yeah.
They had this East West crude pipeline which they moved a lot of oil and those kind of things from there. UAE relaxed a lot of bottlenecks, like administrative challenges, when they used their corridor to make sure that while Jebel Ali was completely inaccessible or it was not working, they moved to some other areas where they can do from this AHC consoles or AHC hubs which they created. There was a lot of talk about Mexico, which used a lot of the US Canada agreement, and of course, they were least impacted by this. Of course, their supplies were hit when it came from India or China or from Asia, but they managed it very well. As far as India is concerned, I think India also did brilliantly well. We were very aggressive in our naval intervention. I mean, the Indian Defense Services, the naval fleets were there. There was a escorting which was done for many of the oil tankers. India also managed it pretty well, especially for the essential services. I'm not saying that all the other commodities, but when it comes to our entire like the essential services through diplomatic channel, through our own defense team, we are able to help them out.
What role should the government play in building resilience in the industry and the trade?
We need to be more self-resilient as a country at the moment, and the individual industry, especially the MSMEs and the SMEs, who are not able to get those kind of global funds or the infrastructure. That is where the government can play a very major role in coming out and supporting them. National shipping line, which we are talking about, so that we have our own container ships which can go out. That's one area where China did pretty well because of their own national carriers coming in and doing it. The other area where which government can always expedite it is our geopolitical and the diplomatic relationship. We should work very strongly. The network like India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, which we are talking about, there should be some financial offers or the kind of support which government can provide, like an emergency working capital, or if they can really come out program like ECGC and all those where they used to give some SOPs or benefits to the exporters. If those kind of things can be like built in and given to those small companies, and of course the technological support, the National Logistics Portal, Unified Digital Logistics Platform, which has come up. Now, this will all allow the small and the mid-size customers to take the advantage or to leverage that AI or technology or the tracking system, which the government is providing, so that they do not invest but use this. And of course, government can help in making sure that some of the warehousing or the combined warehousing facilities provided, where small customers or the exporters can keep their goods for a while on a very subsidized rate, so that in the case of crisis, they don't bear the brunt of holding back the cargo. So those are some of the areas I think, Sangeeta, the government can really come up and provide support.
The tensions in West Asia are not over, but we have learned a lot of lessons about how these trade disruptions can affect our exporters. And these lessons have to help us build in resilience. And the government also has to chip in and provide support to the small and medium enterprises so that they continue with their trade even during the disruptions. Thank you for joining me on the show.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Thank you so much for inviting.